You should have got a message that actually tells you that I'm recording the meeting.
Yes,
We will
yes.
get started right off. I will start by asking you just some basic questions that you probably hear in every interview. And then I'll ask you some questions that are more specific to the special education's records coordinator position that you applied for. Does that sound okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Why don't you start off by telling me a little something about yourself?
Well, I am currently stationed at Eglin Air Force Base. I am a military veteran of the United States Air Force, and my husband is currently active duty. And we have three daughters, ages 18, 12, and 8. And I'm currently in transition to move to San Antonio, Texas at the end of the month. And I'm from Bryan, Texas, home of Texas A&M University.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Sound like you've had a pretty exciting life, and thank you so much for your service. You and your husband's service. We're always very appreciative of the service that you all have given to our country. So, sincere thanks to you for that. All girls, no boys, huh?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome, awesome. Well, the first part of this is just going to kind of be like a basic interview that you've probably been asking the interview in your first interview before we had the video call, but I kind of want to see your expressions when you answer them. So just bear with me and just take your time, pace yourself, and we're going to both get through this together.
Okay.
Okay. Please tell me one weakness and one strength when dealing with special education children slash special education adults. One
One
strength and one weakness.
one strength is being able to encourage them when they get frustrated when you're trying to teach them a new goal. Being able to encourage them and push them as far as you can in order to tell them that they can do it and just to keep working hard and keep trying. One weakness is if, say, for instance, you have a child with autism and their frustrations take over in the time that you're trying to teach them, just not being able to come back to what we were learning at that moment and just having to calm them down and just to help them out and kind of come back to it later on or even the next day.
Well, thank you. I have a nephew with autism and he struggles with social interaction. Do you all have experience with helping kids to, kind of break the ice and help them to interact with other kids that are within that environment?
Yes, ma'am, that is part of their goals that we work on throughout the year in order to help them adapt to.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Next question. So, if you are selected for this position, I need to know when you can start. When can we be able to start in a week, 2 weeks? I need a timeline.
We are transitioning at the end of the month. We should be in the San Antonio area by August the 1st. What we will need to do first is to settle both of our girls into school and get them situated. So I will be available after August the 9th.
After
If
August the 9th. That's not too far. So definitely before school starts, which is the ultimate goal. So that's very promising. I appreciate that. On the second part of this interview, I'm going to go a little bit over your resume, and then I'll go over to some questions that are specific to the position in which you are applying for. Now, I will let you know that I did look at your LinkedIn account. I noticed that you did not have a Facebook account. Actually, you probably did, but wasn't a lot of information. There's some things about your sorority. So yeah, go SOAR. But so most of the information I'll be asking is to deal with that. So
okay.
on your resume, it said that you worked for Okaloosa STEM Academy. So
Yes.
please tell me one thing that you liked about working there and one thing that you did not like about working there.
One thing I liked about working there is just the diversity and being able to work with different students that had different disabilities, just to learn more about the backgrounds of those disabilities and how to handle and best help them in dealing with their disabilities. One thing I did not like is how our department, not just at STEM Academy, but for the whole school district, was kind of put on the back burner a lot. When we asked for a lot of help in certain things, like with resources or training on how to deal with certain behaviors, we didn't get much training in that. So we had to figure out things on our own and work together, work with my colleagues in order to find out different plans and do our own research on how to handle certain behaviors.
And I would say the end result was a positive one or a negative one.
It was positive because we were all able to work together. I was a rookie teacher and there were a lot of veteran teachers. So, and my mentor teacher also was one of the teachers there on staff. So they were able to help me out
Very
throughout
good.
issues that we had.
Thank you. Thank you. And so tell me, why did you leave that position?
Because of the pandemic, I decided it was safe to stay home with my daughters and homeschool them during the last school year.
And so the specific position you were in did not allow you to be able to do that type of work from home?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, the pandemic has been very tough on a lot of us. And so, I applaud those that could stay, but definitely understand those who had to make a conscious decision to be safe for their family. So, thank you for your honesty and thank you for that. In your position as a substitute teacher for Okaloosa County School District, how often were you called in to substitute?
I was called in weekly.
Weekly. So, you pretty much was like a full-time teacher almost.
Yes, yes. And once I got to STEM and volunteer substituting for them, the first time they saw how they said I was very good and they kept calling me back. So I was mostly at STEM Academy and then got hired as a long-term substitute and then a teacher the next year. So STEM
Oh,
Academy was really
wonderful.
the school I was mainly at.
So, did you find that there were any challenges between being a full-time teacher opposed to being what they say is just a substitute? And I hate that word just to anything, but in just being a substitute, were there any challenges that you ran into?
Um, when I became a teacher, the paperwork that was huge. The IEP database, just having to fill out all the information, scheduling all the IEP meetings. And when it was my time to go to professional development or training, being able to find a substitute to be in my class because there, unfortunately, a lot of people do not want to substitute for a special needs class.
Understood. Understood. I also had a daughter with ADHD and ODD, and so I understand how it's challenging even for a parent, much less a teacher, to have to deal with such challenges. And so we applaud you all for taking in our kids because my child would have been one that would have been left behind had it not been for people like you who want this profession. So I appreciate you. You also have a very impressive resume, which, like I mentioned before, I found most of your information on LinkedIn. And while you were in the military, it showed that you were a manager at several different times. You were different managers. So tell me, how did these management positions apply to the role that you're going to be doing today as a teacher and prepare you for the interview that you're doing today?
In so many ways. Administrative. I worked in the warehouse a lot, so I was in charge of aircraft parts. I worked forklifts. I had to do the enlisted performance reports. So both on the administrative side and physical side, I had to ship kits out in and out of the country full of aircraft parts that were mission capable. So me being able to step up and lead a team of sometimes just 2 people up to 5 people really forced me to step up and be able to be the supervisor that I needed to be, the manager that I needed to be. The Air Force definitely prepared me with 15 years of managerial experience.
So how do you think the transition from being a manager in logistics and warehouse and all those different things are different from now being a special education teacher?
It's very different because you didn't really have to deal, you dealt with behaviors in a way in the military, but going into the special education field, it was a different atmosphere because there was more research required on the different disabilities and cognitive abilities that some of the children are born with that you really had to do more research on and really had to work harder in order to be able to help and assist them in their day-to-day lives. So it's
Absolutely,
very different.
absolutely. So are you familiar with administering and interpreting developmental tests? Were you exposed to having to do assessments and testing for children with developmental issues?
Yes, it was called the Battelle inventory that we had to do on our students that were transitioning out of pre-K into kindergarten the next school year. But unfortunately, due to the pandemic, all the tests that I had scheduled had to come to a halt because we
Mm.
ended up not coming back after spring break. So I was not able to administer those tests.
But you had them ready and you were exposed to it, so you pretty much
Yes.
know what would have needed to be done had you been able to go forward in that position.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now, according to the federal and TEA regulations, you will be responsible for determining students' eligibility for special education services. How will you ensure that these procedures are followed and carried out?
By following any of the standards that the Vertex education policy entails.
Okay, can you give me a little bit more information on that?
Making sure that their records are up to date, make sure that everything is in compliance. If they attended a previous school, to request those records from the school to our school so we can be able to look through them and make sure that the students are eligible to attend whatever school that they're going to be enrolled in.
Thank you. That's the word I was looking for, compliance. So you talked about IEP earlier. Now that's the individualized educational plan.
Yes.
Okay. Tell me what your experience has been with working with IEPs. Are you all done online now? And is it like a 2 hour meeting with the parents? Or tell me a little bit more about how that process works.
Well, at first, before the pandemic, it was all in person. So it entailed the specialists, the specialists, it entailed or included the teacher and the parents and two other teachers because they had to be there to sign off on all the documents. Um, Depending on the length of the meeting, it depends on the parents. If the parents have a lot of questions, it could be anywhere from an hour to 3 hours. It just depends on the parents, and we make sure to cater to the parents' needs. We don't have a set time on how long it is because we want to make sure we answer all the questions that the parents have before their child is enrolled at our school. And the main teacher that the child has been assigned to will be there as well to answer any questions and to make sure that they have all what they need. And there's also a tour of the classroom, a tour of the school, so the parents feel a little bit more at ease of where they're going to be placing their child.
Okay, thank you. And so are the parents encouraged to ask any questions that they don't understand throughout that process?
Yes.
Because with you as an educator, you know all the terms and the acronyms and the lingos, but parents may not. And so do you all really take your time to explain to them, like IEP? I knew what that was because I've been exposed to that. But if you call a parent, you say, hey, we want to do an IEP, and they say, okay, what are you doing to ensure that they know what an IEP is, what an ARD is, and things of that nature?
Well, surprisingly, when I was at STEM, most of the parents had already had their children in schools or in previous schools, so they already knew what it
Good.
was. But if they don't, we make sure to explain everything to them. We take our time. We do not rush any of the processes when it comes to our working with our parents.
Thank you. That is so important. Now, you mentioned earlier about working with kids with autism. Can you just give me a few other developmental disabilities or intellectual disabilities that your children have dealt with that you specifically was placed over?
Yes, Down syndrome, children with low muscle tone, meaning it was hard for them their gross motor skills were very weak
Mhm.
to where we had to have physical therapy and come in and help work with them to help strengthen their muscles. Um, Pretty much, yes, autism, yes, Down syndrome. I'm trying to think of another one. We had another child that had very aggressive behavior to the point where we've had to send him home, and it was pretty violent behavior.
Okay. Now, I'm
Mhm.
not really familiar with the Okaloosa school district since I'm here in Texas. And within the schools there, do they have OT and PT, occupational therapy and physical therapy there on campus to where the children can have exposure to that there? They don't have to go to an off-site location to have that on a regular basis?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Okay, that's
They
good.
come in our classrooms regularly, every week.
Wonderful. And how large typically are the classrooms there?
My classroom for the whole year was only 8 students, but it can go up to 15.
Okay, now is that eight with you and another special assistant aide, or how many adults are in the class with those children?
Two. So it's the main teacher and the paraprofessional.
Got you, understood. Okay. I'm almost done. I know it maybe seem like it's taken a little while, but I want to make sure that I'm thorough. So thank you for being patient with me. In your past experience, have you worked with the PIM system? It's the Public Educational Information Management System.
No, ma'am, I have not.
What computer data database did you all use in order to put information in regarding the children?
It was the IEP database that was on the Okaloosa website that we had to go to. So we'd have to go to the main page and click on the link that was provided for us there to go into the database.
Okay, so you may have to use the PIM system. Do you feel like that's something that you would be intimidated by? You feel like you're a quick learner, you would be able to just get up to speed with a little bit of training?
I would be able to get up to speed with training, definitely.
Okay, thank you. So the last question, and of course, I always say it's the most important question, is I would like to know, why do you feel like you would be a good fit for our school, for our company?
Well, I really have a passion for the students. I really have a passion for education, and I really have a passion of encouraging students to do their best in school because of my background in my education when I was growing up. It wasn't the best, but seeing where I am at now, I can help encourage other students that you can do it. It may be hard, but you can do it with hard work. And I just want to be able to be the face to encourage those children that they can success in anything that they want to do in life, and education is very important.
Very good. So we always like to end our interviews by asking, do you have any questions for me?
No, ma'am, not at this time.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Ms. Shake, for your availability to do this interview with me. And we will be in touch either by a phone call or by email. So make sure that you're checking both. And I wish you the best with your future endeavors.
Thank you very much, Ms. Castro.
You're very